Typography is ancient and modern as being born. A series of decisions. They are. Typography is hierarchy. Typography is typeface choice, or typeface choices, or for me it's typeface choices that all look really similar, but they're very slightly different S's. Typography is type size, line length, and leading. Typography is white space. Typography is macro and micro spacing. Typography is system. Typography is standards. Typography is emotion. Typography is sequence and pace. Typography is lining up and not lining up at the same time. Typography is craft. Typography is knowledge. Typography is the production of language. Typography is theory. And typography is practice. So, firstly, welcome everyone. Great to see you all. I feel quite overcome with so many people that I know, and so many people that I don't know that made the effort to come to Leeds today. So I really appreciate it. For those who don't know me, I'm Fraser Muggeridge, Professor of Design here at Leeds Beckett. And really, this conference is kind of trying to look at typography as theory and practice, and how those two can be intertwined. When I started to kind of come up with the idea of this conference, I sort of selfishly thought I would like to make a conference that I personally would like to go to myself. That's really the ambition of mine. This is the schedule. We're in the main room here, which is the cinema, and there are also two slightly smaller rooms, which are room 1 and room 2, which could be accessed either through the top left up there. You go through the door and straight on, and there's 2 small rooms straight ahead of you, or you can go out to the main lobby, either up the stairs or up the lift just to the next floor. Everything is kind of loosely organized. We had a lot of brilliant submissions for papers, so decided to open it up to include typeface, to include teaching. But again, do go to what you're interested in, but also note that the event will be filmed, the talks will be filmed, so everything will be available online at a later date. So don't worry if you miss out. I've got some very boring admin things about fire alarm that I need to say. If there's a fire alarm, we need to leave by the fire exit, which I think was there and there. Just need to say that. Toilets are on the ground floor and on the first floor. And before we start, I've got a few thanks to make. Firstly, Zara, who actually is still on the front desk. Zara Worth has really helped me in organising this conference, the logistics. So she's done great. So she's not here to hear me thank her, but maybe you can tell her I thanked her. We also went through a very important peer review. So the people that were on the peer review panel that were looking at all the submissions, I'd like to thank them. They know who they are. I'd like to thank Harry Blackett from Endless Supply, who worked with me on the website. It's been really great. And of course, the support of Leeds Beckett when I suggested I want to do a conference on the typography on a Saturday. They've supported me, especially Simon Morris, who's really helped me and supported me in this endeavour. Other people to thank very quickly: Tara Langford, who is the head of BA Illustration, MA Graphic Design, has been great in organising some students of the courses who will be popping up to introduce speakers. So that's something that's going to happen. So it's great for them. I'd like to thank the students for putting themselves out there to make that happen. The tech support people, I'd like to thank as well. And of course, Tim Blackwell and his crew of students. I think they're studying film and media something, are filming around. So it's a real great that they're involved and helping out. So I'm going to just do a very short intro before Paul starts. Early in my education in 1991 at the University of Reading, Professor Michael Twyman gave a series of lectures called Typography Without Words that used a simple notation to teach the graphic variables of basic typography and hierarchy. And through different combinations of X's, zeros, and I's, with varying space, typography was simplified into an abstract shape. Made sense to me. Positive, negative space. It's also a great article for those that are interested, they should look up, which is Invisible Language, from 1981. Of course, that kind of somehow I often see these in mobile apps when I wait for things to load. They kind of mimic this kind of typographic compositions in an abstract way. Kujing Sylvia Lee sent me an Instagram message saying this type of loading screen signals users what type of content will come up once the loading is done. An array of cars in a certain layout, for example. That way it gives users a familiarity, a seamless user experience for what they will encounter. Thank you for sending that. The relationship between type size, line length, and leading, which is demonstrated in the dimensional relationships in the composition of text by Peter Burnhill, which was published as part of the Stafford Papers from Stafford College of Art and Design in 1970. It's a long introduction. Compares the same piece of text set at the same size, but with different line lengths, different leading. And as a viewer, you can find the optical value for each variable and the effect that each variable has on each other. These two kind of theoretical examples always stayed with me. And they're kind of maybe a theory that I've taken, and I'm now going to show you some examples of that in practice, not from my work, but from others. And I'm kind of describe this as progressive paragraphs. I'm going to show three examples very quickly. Firstly, visual communication, architecture and painting from 1967, which was written and designed by Herbert Bayer. And it employs the most peculiar type of typesetting throughout the whole book. It seems that the text is justified and unjustified at the same time. I'm often asking myself, why was this done? And how was this done? What was the system? Of course, you might also notice the sort of generic or the general typesetting is in lowercase, with extra space between sentences. This was kind of familiar to Bayer and others' approach at that time. It really has this kind of justified and unjustified at the same time that I'm interested in. And the clue is what happens at the end of the line. So the text is set justified. If the last word doesn't fit on the same line, then it's taken over to the next line, with the line above remaining justified. It's totally logical, but totally odd. And this method would have been possible to specify to the designer at the time and performed by the typesetter, in this case, Graphic Arts Typographicus, Inc. That's what the name of them. In the technology at the time, which would have been either setting in galleys, in letterpress, or film setting, and then pasted up to 4 pages. It's a novel form that I've never seen before or after. It's really inefficient, as any text corrections would throw everything out. So it becomes line specific, but it's truly experimental and truly Bayer. Here's another example. This is the telephone book designed by Richard Eckersley, and this was composed on a desktop computer in 1989. With the designer really in control by seeing, previewing, typesetting each section. He was able to play out different ways of indicating paragraphs using each chapter using a different approach that related conceptually to the text. Within the book, there are examples of a method that I call contextual indent paragraph settings. And during my research, I've also noticed it's noted as drop-down setting, where the end of the paragraph has a relationship to the paragraph above. I'm just going to quote from his introduction. At first, you might find the way the book runs to be disturbing, but we've tried to break up its logic typographically. Like the electronic impulse, it's flooded with signals. To crack open the closure sovereignty of the book, we have feigned silence and disconnection, suspending the tranquil cascading paragraphs and conventional divisions. To another similar and perhaps kind of more radical approach, this is Phil Baines's book, Layout for Raw Creation, 1996, where the end of a paragraph becomes the start, the horizontal axis for the next paragraph. And again, the brief from the publisher was to create a design that had some kind of interesting typographic voice. So after reading the manuscript, Phil felt the whole thing was linear. So joining all the paragraphs together in a continuous way seemed to make sense. It was a happy coincidence that the book was about outsider art, so a kind of outsider typography solution was appropriate. Of course, an agreement had to be made with the editor after the manuscript was delivered. So if a word was taken out, a word would have to be added to avoid extensive reflows. Imagine doing that today. Yeah. This labour of love by a designer running a small studio who was prepared to sacrifice efficiency of composition for innovation shows the importance of paragraphs within typography. Thank you very much.